Oh, wow. Good morning, world. Good morning, world. It is wonderful to be alive today. It's a great day for learning. My name is Mike Lang before, so I'm joined by Mike Lang. I'm the Director of Storytelling at ed.Xtraordinary, and we are very happy that everyone is watching either live or hopefully sometime in the future when they get an opportunity to talk to us a little bit. We're going to be talking a little bit about Canvas today. We're going to talk about designing today. We're going to show you some strategies, some tips, some really, really interesting things today. And I am joined by my colleague, my friend, an ingenious integrator and innovator, Jeanine Collins, my colleague at ed.Xtraordinary. Jeanine, good morning. How are you?
I'm great. Good morning, Mike Lang. It's fun to be here. And I like how you said it. Today is a great day for learning.
Indeed, indeed. And so at Extraordinary, we are a kind of newbie in the Valley, but really interested in reimagining a lot of the educational philosophies, perhaps, that we can deal with in classrooms, just in terms of introduction and bona fides and stuff. Jeanine, tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started, and I'll kind of do the same.
Absolutely. Well, I'm very proud to be Vegas born and raised. I'm a product of the Clark County School District. I was an educator here in the Clark County School District for 13 years. I taught high school dance. I was trained as a historian, taught dance, and actually integrated design thinking into a lot of my teaching processes. So I'm excited to talk about that and reflect on that with you today. And I've had the opportunity to work in the nonprofit space for a little bit, both in ed policy and now here at ed.Xtraordinary, where we're just really working to collaborate with other educators, entrepreneurs, young people, community members to continue to build future-ready learning systems. So very excited to be here and have a lot of experience that comes from trying and failing and iterating in my own practice, and love working alongside other educators who are doing the same.
Excellent, excellent, excellent.
And what about
And
you?
this is just recently stepped out of the classroom. So 18-year career. Um, Loved, I say 99.9% of it. And kind of coming to this space is reinvigorating because I think it gives me an opportunity to really help my colleagues in terms of kind of getting, when you're in your classroom, you're usually in your classroom by yourself. This gives me a little bit of freedom. So I'm a DC native, so I'm not Vegas born, but DC native. Um, again, 18 years in the classroom. I taught in Mississippi. That's where I started teaching. Went to Taiwan and taught for a little while. I've been in Vegas for the man, last 15 years of my career. And, lots of really cool. The digital space is kind of where I live. So I'm an Apple Distinguished Educator, a PBS Digital Innovator. I've had students who have just kicked it out of the stadium in terms of just helping me look like I know what I'm talking about. And so I was blessed to have received the Heart of Education Award last school year as well because of what my students were able to produce digitally. And just, very blessed, had a very blessed career. And, the whole point is seeing that smile on the kid's face, Janine. I think that's that's always the thing that makes it all worth it, regardless of what's happening and whatnot, right?
Absolutely.
All right, so today we're going to talk about discussion, and we're going to Canvas. If you're a Clark County School District teacher, Canvas is the learning management system that is been chosen for you to do a lot of your online, your hybrid work, your in-person work as well. It's not just a digital tool for distance learning, it's an online tool as well. But we're going to talk a little bit about design first, discussion as well, and discourse. And then at the end of our time together, we're going to talk about how we can take those two ideas and place them in Canvas to do some pretty interactive and dynamic things. And kind of as a word to the wise in terms of Canvas, don't try to do all of the things in Canvas. I think that's like the thing that, because teachers are such professionals and such amazing tacticians. I think we tend to go into situations and try to learn all of the different pieces and all the nuances and start to innovate early on. Taking a step back and saying there's one piece of this I can tackle, and if I tackle this one piece very well for a month, for 2 months, for 6 months, for a year, it's okay. I don't need to know all of the aspects of things, and we're going to kind of look at things in terms of philosophically from the design thinking mindset. Jeanine is a master in terms of design thinking and kind of. I really appreciate working with her because she's a very inquisitive person, and I like inquisitive people. They ask questions, they keep you on your toes, etc. So Janine's going to kind of, we're going to kind of have this conversation. The show will be kind of a conversational one, and then we'll do some demos at the end. All right. So Jeanine, before we get started, you mentioned that you were a trained historian, but you
Yeah.
were a dance teacher. Tell us a little bit about that before we get started.
Well, I was a trained historian and a dance teacher,
Okay.
and so yeah, I mean, I am a graduate of Las Vegas Academy where I studied dance, and I also loved learning about the stories of our past and conflicting narratives and trying to make sense of truth and perspective and point of view and always, I think, trying to think about how we make things better for other people. And I think that's what always connected me to dance because I felt like being a dancer, choreographing, being immersed in that art making process felt very human, felt very real, felt very connected to other people, and felt like um, when I was in that process, was always trying to make sense of what it meant to be a great human being or to be a or not to be a great human being and what it meant just to be a part of the human experience. And so I think that's my connection to design thinking and to history, because I really think that when done well, history is really looking at those stories of human experience and that change over time. And so while I studied how to teach history, I ended up teaching in the dance classroom. And I think that figuring out how to integrate the ways of thinking in both of those disciplines was something
Mm-hmm.
that I really struggled with, grappled with, got better at as I was doing it, and really saw that ultimately it wasn't my job to get well, it was my job to expose young people to skills and fundamental aspects of all different kinds of dance. But it was also to really help them think about themselves in the world, to see themselves, to understand identities and relationships, and how art could be a tool for deepening that, building empathy, and really just helping them be a more grounded, competent, empowered human being. And so those are the things. So when you say, Mike, Janine's a master of design thinking, I just want to back up and say I appreciate that's you said it, not me. But what I would say is I am curious, and I do think that being insatiably curious makes you gravitate towards a design thinking process because you embrace the fact that you really don't know the answer and that it's okay. And as a matter of fact, not knowing is the way forward. And the kinds of questions that we ask are going to be what ultimately helps us determine what we know. And so instead of being afraid of not knowing or putting knowing at the center, the goal is to just be curious and unpack and learn and grow. And so that is my connection as a trained historian and dance educator for many years who loves design thinking for all things in life and learning.
Indeed, indeed. You got to kind of shout out. So Mac Middle School is in the house. Gave you kind of
Oh,
a
hey,
shout out.
Mac.
Uh, in terms of, so again, I too have been a practitioner of design thinking just because I think it's a great way to frame. I think that looking for solutions and failure is okay. It's totally
Yes.
solely a cool thing to deal with. And again, we're talking about this deal. We're talking designing for discussion, and again, discussion is discourse is central to humanity, right? Being able to converse with someone else and to acquire knowledge and to spit that knowledge back. But before we get into discussion, what is a working definition of design? When you say design thinking, and that's it's I don't want it to say it's becoming cliche but people are using it all of the time. Let's have a working definition before we go forward.
Working definition. A creative approach to problem solving.
Okay. Okay, short, simple, gets us to the point, right? So,
Yeah.
I have a problem. I need a solution. I have a set of steps that I utilize in order to find that works for me. Excellent. Um, so that's design. What's discussion? When we say discussion, what do we mean? Like, is any conversation, does that equate to discussion in your opinion?
I think conversation where we're really listening and we're building on ideas that others are bringing to the table, where we're surfacing assumptions that maybe aren't present in the discussion. I think so much. Sometimes we think about discourse as what's being said, and I think really great discourse surfaces what's not being said as well, and helps illuminate that and
Mm,
probe that. So I think in a good design thinking process, that's what's happening. And I think when I'm engaged in discourse with you, we're back and forth, and I'm like, ooh,
mm,
this idea, I got this, and you're like, yeah, but what about that? And I'm like, I hadn't thought of that before. And so I think discourse really moves our challenges our assumptions, potentially shifts our paradigms, and when we're doing it well, and I think in a civil way, it can also break down barriers of isolation and help us feel closer to each other too.
Well, I think I've always one of my favorite teachers in high school always said that the discourse and discussion, it should be tennis, right? It should be this back and forth in which the strokes are going, and then the ball determines where I go hit the ball. I hit my next stroke is, and we kind of have this. It's a dance, right? It's very very choreographed dance, and it's not football, right? It's not one person holding the ball and dominating and say you can't have it, right? And so I think I really appreciate that kind of this us being listeners, processors of information, questioners of information, and then assimilating the pieces of information where like, hey, that challenged my thought on that subject. Perhaps this is somewhere I need to evolve or change. So, all right, cool. So we have a working definition of design, working definition of discussion. Let's start talking about design thinking. So,
Cool.
when you again, this is kind of, it's one of those terms in education right now. A lot of people are saying it, and then you're like, "What does that mean?" And oh, I'm a design thinker. And you're like, "Oh, well, is your design thinking the same as somebody else's design thinking or whatever?" So we'd appreciate very much Jeanine, who is, I mean, a master practitioner. Let me say she has deep insight into the understanding of the processes of design thinking. And again, that's one of the reasons why, again, I definitely appreciate Jeanine, and I converse with her on a regular basis about all these ideas and whatnot. But when we talk about design thinking, like what are the steps or the general concepts around design thinking, Jeanine?
Um, I think I actually want to dive in with, well, okay, so we're a lot of teachers on this call together. So we are familiar with frameworks and processes, right? And so often, many of us are familiar with the writing process. We're pre-thinking, we're brainstorming, we're putting a draft together, we go through an editing process, and then we get a final product. It might go back through an editing process again, and then it becomes the actual final product. Design isn't, as a process, isn't dissimilar to that. But I think what makes it really exciting are the principles and the mindsets, because it's the way of being in design that makes it so valuable. Mike, do you think we could reference that slide deck? Because I think I will. I'm going to go back. Okay, so the squiggle is from Stanford's D School. So I did not come up with the squiggle. I want to give appropriate attribution. This is their example of what it feels like to be in a design process. And so we start with a ton of confusion, if you will. Everything's all balled up. And as we work through a design process, we're constantly seeking and crafting clarity. This is an iteration that I made for a particular conversation. You will see different principles and mindsets that are sort of highlighted in a design process. I think these are some of the ones that I tend to feel are the most important when I'm working with teams of adults, young people, or really just anybody. So really beginning with curiosity and humility. When we're in the beginning stages of a design process, being curious and being humble with the sense of understanding that we don't know all the answers. Perhaps we see a problem. Perhaps we're in the middle of a problem. Perhaps we need to teach something that is clear. We have a clear prompt. However, how do we become more curious about unpacking that problem? What does it look like from multiple and diverse perspectives? What do other people, what other data points exist around that? And how can we really proceed with humility and recognize that the way that we are maybe understanding it isn't the only way, and maybe isn't even the best way to understand the nature of a problem. If we're doing that in a team, what's really critical is that we're also building trust, because it's truly vulnerable to walk into a situation and say, you know what? I don't understand this problem. I'm not sure what the best solution is, and I don't even know how I'm going to solve it yet. And design thinking is really laid out for that, for somebody to be able to walk that road and be comfortable with it, or as comfortable as you can. And so when we think about building trust at those initial stages, it looks like, hey, what do you see? What do I see? What questions do you have about the nature of a problem? And being able to hold space for listening and conversation, and really reserving judgment as we move through that. As we kind of move through the layers of the design process and the squiggles start to get a little unraveled, we see that the mindsets that are, and the principles that are work are, how are we crafting clarity? And at the same time, how are we not letting go of complexity? That's a mouthful right there, right? If we recognize the complex nature of problems, of challenges, of things that even opportunities we put before students to build solutions, there's multiple ways to solve a problem. If we look at even Common Core math, we know that we are teaching young people that there are many ways to think through solving a problem. So it can be complex. At the same time, you can commit to a path to better understand. And the sooner you commit to building something or going a direction, even if it's the wrong one, you start to learn faster. And so that's the other nature, is like, how do we craft clarity and still hold space for the complexity? You'll see this kind of concept of radical collaboration. When you're doing design, ideally, this is why, Mike, I think we enjoy working together. You don't do design well by yourself. As a matter of fact, I would suggest that the best things I've ever accomplished in my life have been with other humans, always with other people, different perspectives, different viewpoints, different strengths that they are able to bring into a problem solving process or a project, or even just their expertise, right? I'm not an expert at everything. So really, when we bring in multiple voices, multiple perspectives, that radical collaboration where, no, Jeanine, I don't see the problem like that. I think you're going down the wrong path, and this is why. And being able to hold space for that conversation as we're doing it, immensely powerful, right? And to your point, that's discourse in action. This building to learn, you'll see, happens as we start to get a little smoother. And that's where we start to try and make our ideas and our solutions tangible, right? When I was teaching dance, I would give my students multiple prompts, and I would ask them to put certain ideas together, and then they would have to actually create something, and they had to show it. And it didn't have to be perfect. It didn't have to be stage ready, but it had to be tangible, so that we could look at it, we could dissect it, we could understand it. And that's where this constant piece of reflection is happening. We build to learn, and then we're reflecting. What are we learning from this? Is this the direction we want to go? And we're always looping back to the ideas and insights that we gain at the beginning of the process for the people and the people that we're solving for, right? That's why it's so reflecting on that in this process, seeing the ways in which we're meeting the needs of the people that we're working with, that's what crafting clarity looks like. And it doesn't stop. So this isn't like a linear process. The squiggle, you all know, who are on this call with us, the minute you start to craft clarity, you get there, and then more questions emerge, more needs arise. What does it look like to do it better? And you're right back into being curious and humble about what you've created again. And so I think, as somebody who doesn't ever see a finish line to most things, don't worry, I do have benchmarked check-ins in life. But for somebody who's oh, we're in an infinite game here, design thinking gives me the tools to sort of feel like I can keep moving through challenges and curiosities and problems relentlessly, and feel like I'm making progress, because I am building, I am learning, and I'm creating. I think we could also go to a slide that shows the actual process, but I just thought maybe, yeah. And so and then we could talk about this too, Mike. So the actual phases of that squiggle. And listen, there are multiple design thinking's been around, Mike, you're right. It has evolved, different people. And people who really love to teach about design also love to say, like, build on it, iterate on it. This is an active process. So like, but this is sort of like what the Stanford D School, who's also does a lot of work with IDEO, which is a really well-known like design thinking consulting firm. This is kind of like the standard design process. We begin with empathy. We learn about the audience. We understand their needs. We sharpen our questions through the definition process. We look at what we've learned through empathizing, and we reframe our challenges and our problems so that we're making sure we're working on the right ones, and not just the ones we think we should solve. When we get to ideate, that is just a fancy word for brainstorm. It's fun, but you just say, I'm just coming up with ideas. How might I solve this? That's where you get in with a group of people and you throw every idea at the wall and you see which ones stick and why. And then you pick the most resonant one for whatever reasons you've decided, and you prototype it, which means you actually build it, you start working it, you dive in, and you do it early in the process, so that as you're building, you're testing it, right? So like you have an idea for a solution, you have an idea for a dance, you're making it, you're building it, you're putting it in front of an audience, you're getting feedback, you're reflecting, and then you're moving back in. What this process doesn't show is like all the lines that really you could really dive in at any stage of the design process. I always go back to empathy, and I kind of try to loop empathy in all the time, because I feel like how we understand those initial needs and the evolving needs is really what makes our design process work or not work. On the other side of the page here, you'll see it starts with notice and ends with reflect. But again, think of these as circular or cyclical processes, and they delineate some methods and mindsets. And you know what, Mike, we can put this all in a link later and share with our audience if they're interested. But
Absolutely.
of course, at each stage of the process, there's methodology to help us notice and reflect and understand our context better, to recognize, hey, if I'm in a room of people, who's designing, and are we designing with the people who we're designing for? Like, are they a part of this process? Which is always my favorite, is like, if we're solving a problem for young people in a classroom, like, let's bring them in and have them do that work along together.
Absolutely.
But what's critical is this noticing and reflecting all the way through. And I think if you could just jump to the next slide, I think when you think about those 5 or 6 or 7 hexagons, the notice and reflecting all the way through, I notice, I wonder, taking time to pause and do that at each stage and multiple times throughout the process is what strengthens the design thinking. And of course, that's really a foundational element of discourse, is what are we noticing? What are we wondering? What are we reflecting? And for all us educators who are excited about metacognition and reflection, I think we could see visually how this design process could potentially be a great tool for metacognition, reflection, and just figuring out how to make something from nothing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think the like the I don't know the interesting thing about the all of it was interesting. The thing that I kind of took from it was you're a dance teacher, right? And
Yes.
I think we are biased toward computer science or mathematics or engineering when we start talking about design thinking, and not here are the humanities, here are the arts. This is how we can apply these things to those things. And that was always like a very interesting thing to see, like English teachers using design thinking to, reinvent how you would portray your essay to the classroom, or a teacher, a special ed teacher, a very, very cool special ed teacher who was utilizing it to find better ways for students to be able to communicate their needs and wants in the classroom. So just being knowing that this is not a content specific strategy, and knowing that the strategy will fit every classroom, I think is the biggest kind of reinforcement, at least in my mind, from what you said. So I really appreciate that. Uh, so concept is there, seems pretty, it's squiggly but linear at the same time. We know where we're going to go, and where we need to go. Why do you think this is something that's worthwhile for teachers, perhaps, take a look at, invest in, try out in their classroom? What makes this worth it?
Well, I think so many educators already value things that we call 21st century skills,
Hmm.
like creativity, communication, problem solving, critical thinking. And it's hard, like those are active skills that they're, often referred to as soft skills. I think they're harder skills to teach sometimes and develop, but and they're also the skills that more and more across different sectors of our economy, people are looking for evidence of people's ability to do those things. And so I think it's really important that we have opportunities to experience being creative and being communicative. And being creative doesn't mean making a dance necessarily. And that's why I think this is such a great tool across any content area, because it's really about creativity, I think. I can give you my working definition, Mike, on creativity is really being able to surface unmet needs and figure out how to do something about them. So if that's being creative, you can create a dance that's engaging with that. You could be using math. You could be absolutely in sort of a scientific process, or connecting poetry and understanding and building a piece of writing that is going to move people, right? And so creativity is not relegated to the arts. And so design thinking, I think, is really just a process for like unleashing people's creativity in whatever discipline they're in. And so if the focus and the goal and the desire is to help make young people, all people, have the skills and tools to thrive in a really rapidly changing, evolving world where far less things are certain than they used to be and maybe never were, like having these tools and having comfort with ambiguity and having the ability to move through anything and figure it out and build something authentic, that's exciting. It's engaging, it's motivating. And I think when we apply that, I saw my students be able to find themselves in the work that I was giving them. And to me, that's like the dream of like learner centered is, sure, we have standards and expectations that you're going to interact with knowledge and be able to do something with it. But like, how do I give you the tools to make for you to connect with this knowledge authentically? And being able to work through a design process gives everybody the tools to like make it meaningful personally. And I think that's, I think we see more than ever, it's so critical. And then we want them to have those skills too, to be able to thrive beyond the 21st century, but certainly the one we're in.
Yeah, I mean, I think I heard a lot of Phil Schlechte there. Phil Schlechte is one of the gods of pedagogy, in my opinion. But that authentic engagement, I want you to want to do this, and I want you to do it. If I turn my back, you're still doing it, right? And because you find value in it, because you find yourself in that work, etc. So I think that
I kind of
is.
want to,
Go ahead, Jeanine.
I want to see something else too, because I also think that I think when we think of like the nature, and this is like a little more in the ed leadership realm here, but when we think of the nature of like adaptive and technical challenges too, like we are swimming in things that can sometimes have technical answers, but are multi-layered, complex, nuanced problems in our world that aren't, one thing isn't going to fix it. There is no silver bullet. And so I think that's another real value add, is being able to have that mindset. Like I have to be able to like move through adaptive and technical thinking as a human, as a leader, and design helps create the space for that and a language for that. And I think that, again, super daunting work, but can also be somewhat accessible.
Absolutely. I mean, I think again, as you were talking, I'm thinking Rory Sutherland. Rory Sutherland has this like great quote where he says, "The opposite of a good solution can also be a good solution." So it's just really interesting, like the real weird places that we can find answers to our problems, and then perhaps we might find answers to problems we weren't even looking for solutions for through this process. I mean, think about how many drugs have been, found because we were looking for the cure to cancer, but then we found out all these other cures along the way because this is good for this thing or whatever. So really, really
and
appreciate
just to point that out, those are fails on the cure to cancer, but wins for other things. So
Absolutely.
I think that's another part of this whole process, is being open to what you do find. And if we fail forward, we'll probably succeed in learning quite a bit.
Absolutely. And one of the things that you said as you were explaining kind of the design thinking concept is that you try to lace empathy through all of the layers. What
Yes.
does that mean? And then
Okay.
why is that such an important thing in you know in your opinion?
So I usually use design thinking. I might even just say human-centered design because for the most part, my engagement with design thinking has been around solving challenges and opportunities that are human-centered.
Mm,
I wasn't, so humans were always at the center of the work that I was doing. And so as a teacher, I think humans are at the center, humans, learners are at the center of the work that we do. And so, oh gosh, my mom, what did she say to me one time? She's an educator, and she was like, are you teaching the students you have? And it was such a great question because I had to go process it. And I was like, I don't know how they're going to connect with this. They're not connecting with this content the way I'd hoped they were. Like, why isn't this happening? And I loved it. I had a clear idea why they could love it.
mm.
Thought I was really doing a good razzmatazz, good job getting them excited, and they just were not buying it. And, I think it was at that early stage in my career where I was like, I just need to ask them, like, what do you like about this? What do you not like about this? What are you interested in? And I would say, early on, never ever did I ever start teaching again without first figuring out why every young person was in the room, what they wanted out of that class, what they thought they were going to have, what I wanted them to understand. And so, like, I would just say, like, level setting expectations and needs at all times is why empathy is so important, because
Interesting.
as humans, they're also evolving all the time. And
Mm,
we know this as teachers. We don't we know we don't have the good fortune of having, and you know what? It's not necessarily that that would be good either. Nobody's stagnant. So the need from yesterday is different than the need from today, is different from 20 minutes ago. And if the goal is to move humans forward, then we have to know what their needs are, and we have to be able to consistently meet them if they're going to continue to progress. And so you could get all the way to your great, brilliant brainstorm solution and start building it. And if it wasn't aligning with what we were learning from young people, like, oh, maybe this, I would build a show. I'll give you an example.
mm.
Dance teacher, I thought historian, we should try to create art in context that was like responding to and commenting on the world through the perspectives of young people in our community. That was a mouthful. So like, oh, we're going to come up with a show. So we'd have like we'd have a question. And the last one we did was called like Alone Together. And it was really about an investigation into digital, like how we interact with social media and technology and live in the world together. This was pre-COVID too, so it's cutting edge a little, Mike. All right, and so and really it was just born out of like high school kids that I had just walking around, and everything was in the phone, right? And so just thinking about how we were connecting with each other. But the nature of that show could go in so many directions, especially as it was organic. And so we just kept coming back to foundational questions. We kept revisiting them as we were making pieces and selecting music and creating costumes. Like, is this really communicating the things that we are hoping to unpack? And
Mm.
so I think the more we stay in that, that's the guide through the ambiguity, through the not knowing, is I revisit empathy because those are my guardrails. The needs of the people I'm working with, the insights, the pain points, the dreams and aspirations, those are the guardrails for the work. And then everything else, you kind of just, mix it up and get it in there. But like, to me, those are the guardrails that help me guide creating something from nothing, are those human needs. And
That checking the temperature as you're cooking to make sure that things are at the
all the
right place,
time.
right? Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah.
Yep. The whole way
So
through.
Sean gave you a shout out. He liked that question that you asked yourself as you were going through
Oh.
as well. And that's for that reason. Again, you are more of a secondary person. I'm more a K-5 person. I've taught middle school
Yep.
before, though. It's one of the reasons why everyone, regardless of what grade you want to teach, should have to teach either kindergarten or special ed. Your practicum or your student teaching should be in one of those two things. It humbles you so quickly to teach 5-year-olds or our special ed friends. And again, I love, so the classes at Deering, I was a school, the longest I've stayed at any school was at Deering, and it was 7 years. Classes I loved the most were the mixed kindergarten and autism classes because they were hilarious. Kindergartners and special ed students are unabashedly honest. Unabashedly honest. If you ask them, did you like that? They will tell you honestly, no, Mr. Lane, that
No.
sucked. we didn't do this. You said we're going to do this, but you didn't do that. You said you did this, but you didn't do that. And you're like, all right, wow, dude, that hurt my feelings. Oh, you asked me. And you're like, yeah, I did ask you. That's absolutely positively the truth. So I think if you can.
Feedback. You got your feedback.
That's absolutely. You get that feedback very quickly, and you come back that next day like, okay, this is what my 5-year-old friends told me that they liked it. Let's make sure more of that pops in there, So definitely understand that. And I think that, again, that empathy, that temperature checks, the surveys, right? You got Google Forms and stuff like that. At the end of modules in Canvas, at the end of school days, exit tickets, exit questions, etc. Yo, what were the best parts of the lesson today? These. What were the parts that you were like, Mr. Lang, you swung and you missed? All right. And part of that is being vulnerable as well, though, with Jeanine, right? That got kind of have that thick skin.
Yeah, you do.
But
again, if the goal, and I think that's where you and I have talked about this too, is depersonalizing, recognizing that like I am Jeanine and I'm also a teacher, and like these are not necessarily the same people. And like while I pour my heart and soul into this, like if I'm going to be a better practitioner for the humans in front of me, I need as much critical feedback as I can get from them to do it better. And design also solicits that feedback and surfaces what's not working all the way through so that you can be better at building the thing you want to do that's going to meet people's needs. But yeah,
it still hurts though. Like
it still does.
You read those comments and you're like, oh, Mr. Lang, you misspelled so and so when you did that link didn't work, and so you're like, oh my god, it hurts.
It hurts.
It's excruciating. Like we can't remove the humanity from the process. Like you catch some feelings. You definitely get some feelings.
But I'll tell you, because man, talk about catching some feelings along the way. It feels so good when you can when you can meet their needs because you're getting that feedback. And I would say that's like it's worth pushing through that personally to be able to give that to your students.
Yeah. Shout out to Elizabeth. Yeah, I mean, I've had. God knows, I mean, like the cool thing about social media is like all the kids that you had that's your first year teaching back in whatever that was are now adults and stuff.
Yeah.
And they'll come back and like, hey, Mr. Lang, so-and-so was really cool about your class, but this part right here, I hope you got better with this. And you're like, thank you, former student. I appreciate that. Hurts my feelings. One of the things that always keeps me humble, Jeanine, is thinking about my first year teaching and how I had Ellen Winterwitz, who was still a guardian angel of mine down in Pascagoula, Mississippi. Ellen Winterwitz came to me and said, look, just smile your way through the year. because it's you don't know what you're doing. And you just got to be cool with that. And you'll get better. Just pay attention to it.
Yeah, and I think had I had this knowledge of this framework when I was starting, I might have looked at myself more as somebody like a work in progress, right? Which I mean, I think I knew I was, but like, I think I could have maybe embraced the idea of like, I don't know. Here's what I'm curious about with my practice, right? And here's how I can continue to evolve and grow. And this is what's working, which is really the mindsets we want for all educators to be excited to embrace. So I do think early and often introducing design thinking in an educator's journey is so valuable because it gives us the tools to keep plugging through really complex classrooms are complex places. Schools are complex places, ecosystems. So like there's a lot. So to be able to go through that and be curious about it and be exploring and understanding and growing in our skills to be able to do that, I mean, that is the work. And I think going in knowing that's what you're doing is makes it a little easier to do it.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's still an unrealistic expectation of perfection with that's placed upon the shoulders of teachers because our job. First of all, we're so passionate about that job, and then second of all, the job is so important. But that almost ended my career before it started. Like that first year was, I have to be very good at all of the things immediately, even though I've never done any of these things. And so I think having that empathy and also having when you talked about the squiggly lines on the design thinking framework, that opportunity to collaborate as teachers, to say,
Oh,
you are
yeah.
not the only person that teaches fourth grade. You are not the only person that does mariachi. You are not the. If we put our heads together, we can kind of work these things out and make our process more efficient, more effective, and we don't have to be up until midnight every night trying to make those lesson plans and those concepts perfect. So excellent.
I
So
think as
it's
teachers, we're always looking for those tools for collaboration for young people in our
absolutely.
classrooms also. And we know that when we do our best work collaboratively, so being able to have those processes in place where we're like inviting each other to work together, adults doing it is great, young people doing it is great. It's more fun. And when you fail, it's more of like, I think it's easier to learn and really look at the failure as learning, which it is, as opposed to if you're doing it by yourself, it feels very personal. And so
Uh,
I think that when more people are invested in the win, it's more impactful. And when they're invested in the fail, it's like, okay, what do we do to fix this? How do we learn from this? What's going on? And I think it's easier to learn collaboratively and collectively too. That's my
Interesting.
own experience.
So empathy. Then the next kind of piece is that analysis piece, and that kind
Oh
of,
yeah.
what is analysis? Can you give us some examples, some practical examples from your experience of utilizing this inside the classroom?
Sure. Um, So I'll go back to the show that I was making with my students. And we asked a bunch of questions of ourselves and of each other around like why we use social media, what do we like about it, why, how are we connected through technology, how are we disconnected through technology, like what does it mean to be friends with somebody, how do you feel when you're in relationship with them. These were the kinds of questions we explored. We got a lot of answers because I had 240 students, so they were all asking these questions. And so when we came back, the nature of the next step is probably, I would say, empathy and analysis or problem definition are probably the most critical pieces of the design process, because everything after that is really just like very quickly working through the scientific method or the writing process. It's this phase where the magic happens, which is where you make sense of the data that you're collecting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And interview data, perceptual data, intuitive feelings, insights. And so we took all of that data, just like a lot of us do when we were like in a strategic planning process or we're trying to figure out where we want to go. And we started to map it and we like put it on sticky notes. And actually, I think we used index cards in my class there. And we were like moving them around and kind of grouping things and looking at themes. And then just sort of talking through what the people in, I had 7 classes. So it would be 7 different classrooms of designers seeing data and making sense of it.
Mm-hmm.
And while I would say on the whole, we all kind of came to the same conclusions about like what themes we should pull out and put in the show and what things were important, different class periods had different insights based off of the humans that were in that room.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the truth of life, right? Like you're going to have a different lived experience that makes you live into somebody else's lived experience in a different way that helps you draw out an insight. And that's the magic, is those conversations, is the time. And really, it's like what? It's an Albert Einstein quote. If I had like 60 minutes to save the world, I would spend 55 minutes defining the problem and 5 minutes figuring out the solution. And so 5 minutes working on the solution. Like, what is the actual problem? What are the things we should be working on? What is most important? And so that is the phase where we just put all the data out, move it around, have protocols we can share with people around how to ask questions of data and ask questions of insights and how to build that discourse through that process so that we uncover things that were lingering beneath the surface. And I think, again, that is the power of that time, because sometimes there's very explicit insights, everybody has it. We need our phones. We're connected to our phones because, they're cool, they're fun, they're addictive. And like, I can talk to people on them. But then there's the, like, I don't know, I'm nervous about interacting with other people and I feel more comfortable if I have my phone in my hand.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't always know if I'm going to say the right thing. And if I can communicate via phone or text, like, I feel like I can start having that conversation with that person. So like those kinds of nuances, to uncover that and really dig into those, that's like, I think that's where the real pain points or the real dreams and aspirations live, that's where you want to get clear
Mm.
when you design a
That's
lesson or an opportunity or a solution.
Shout out to Sean again. Sean has a quote in a similar vein as the Albert Einstein quote: "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I will
There we
spend the
go.
first four sharpening the axe." That's Abe Lincoln said that.
That's great. That's
So
great.
very very
Yeah,
dope. So empathy to this kind of like observing people or observing a situation and whatnot. Second part's kind of asking questions, getting data from those questions, research. If we want to go with the classic thing, I want to research some things.
absolutely.
Hey, talk to my friends, do some surveys, sit in the, I mean, my mom, every time she comes to Vegas, this is pre-COVID, her favorite thing was to come to, let's go on a strip and people watch. That's just her thing. She likes to sit down and just watch people go by. And then I wonder what this person's story is. I wonder what this person's thinking. Oh, they're holding hands. I wonder if how long they've been together. Just really like interesting stuff. So my mom is a design thinker as well. She made, shout out to my moms. Um, so then my favorite part of this, and I enjoy the empathy. I enjoy the analysis. The ideation phase. First of all, it's a $50 word for brainstorming, as I said before. And
Right.
I don't like calling it, because I'm K5 most, I like calling it daydreaming. And kids really
Ooh, I love
attach
that.
to daydreaming really
Yes.
quickly because like you're in your own head, you're thinking about, like, there is no limit in daydreaming. You could be
Yes.
anything you want. You can solve all the problems. You give all the superpowers. You can have lollipops that taste like whatever flavor you want. But that daydreaming thing really seemed to suck, especially if the 5-year-olds, right? Brainstorming not so much. Daydream. I want everyone to just stare in the sky and think about something. Oh, Mr. Lay, I'm thinking this. I'm thinking that. So really, really kind of a cool concept, even for the older kids. Again, I taught 6th, 7th, and 8th this year, and they all attached to the daydreaming thing. It was like instantly people got it.
Well, you're pushing me real fast because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, right? Even when I've worked with teams of adults, if we're brainstorming, everyone feels like they have a job to get done. If you're daydreaming, they feel like they're suddenly in this expansive, no limit space. Like, what is possible? That what can I imagine, as opposed to
Exactly.
just what
Yeah.
is possible? And that's so critical because if we start, like, wild ideas are essential in brainstorming, ideation, daydreaming. And if we just limit ourselves to what we think we can do, then we forget to push beyond what is actually already happening, to then pull from that and then figure out how to make it real. So, like, I love that, and I think I might never call it brainstorming again, Mike Lang. Thank you.
It's
Daydreaming.
one of those things where you're like, and then as one of the things that I've always done, Jeanine, I don't know if you agree with this or disagree with it, was I would always, when we started this process, I would start with the most zany idea I could come up with my head and put it on the board. So kids
100%.
knew that there was no limit. Like, I'm not joking. This is totally insane. Put any insane idea that you have on the board, in the discussion thing in Canvas, on the Padlet, on the Jam board or whatever. And sometimes, kids, especially your middle school friends, are like learning themselves, and they would go a little
Yes.
little far, and you'd have to like, hey, let's not
Bring
do
it back
this.
in. Yeah,
But
right.
generally, kids were able to stay within some acceptable parameters in terms of school appropriate language and concepts, et cetera, et cetera. So in terms
Yes.
of ideation, daydreaming, brainstorming, et cetera, like one of the things I always ran up against, Jeanine, was how do you do that with the current realities of curriculum and grading and stuff? So how do you reconcile those two things? And me, I was always like, hey, I don't like, I know there's grades and stuff, but we're going to do this anyway. And if I get in trouble, hey, so what? But the reality is, daydreaming can last a long time. That's why it's daydream. You could like be up in the sky for hours thinking about stuff. How do you rein it in enough that you still cover the curricula that you're supposed to cover?
Well, first of all, I want to acknowledge that if you're going to go off track with imagination, that's a good place to go, especially if it's centered in the learner's imaginations. Because we learn a lot about how people think and what they value and what they know and don't know by what they can imagine, right? It's actually a really great form of, like, I think, of assessment for an educator to be able to see how young people can make sense of a concept as wildly as possible.
Absolutely.
Because I actually would argue, number one, that it's worth taking the time. And this is from somebody who's been in a design process with like adults. I've been brought in and it's like, we don't really have the time. Like, Jeanine, you have 2 hours to get us to this point. And like, yes, I will chop the depth of daydreaming down a little bit to be able to move us ahead. But like, if I'm going to make like choices around, again, I think we have to come back to like, what's the point of all of this? And I think the point of all of this is the learner. And so what does the learner need and what does the learner value? And so I think recalibrating and level setting that is the most important thing gives us permission to take time to daydream, and then also helps us think about what we want to learn from daydreaming. What are the important things that an educator or peers could learn about each other through the sharing of wild ideas, right? What different people's contexts are and how they're pulling things in different ways. That's informative. And then we do, we all have time constraints. So, if we spend, we're not going to spend 2 weeks on it. We might spend a day, we might spend a class period. We might spend 30 minutes, but we know where we want to go with that because we want to give people that space. We want to surface the interesting things that come out of it. And then we say, okay, what can we do with that? Right. And then we always get back to like, what can we do with this? So what is possible? And, so I don't know if the question is like, if you're trying to figure out grading and constraints and standards, like I would ultimately say all of those things exist in service of moving learners ahead. And so imagination moves young people being able to make sense of ideas, to dream what is possible, gives them the opportunity to feel like they could figure out what they are good at. And I'm pulling up a piece of data because I knew this would come up and I'm going to say it because I read this in this Gallup poll. And it's like, as early as fifth grade, over 65% of young people are already not finding the opportunity to do what they do best. I'll say it again. As early as fifth grade, over 65% of young people are already not finding the opportunity to do what they do best. If we're so busy pushing young people through the standards to make the grade, those things exist, but the kid exists first. And so if their understanding of themselves, their identity, their relationships to their context, their dreams, their hopes, their aspirations are being nurtured by being given daydream space along the way. I mean, in my own learning and experience, because listen, I've done it, right? I did it when I was new and I was like, we got to get through this ballet class and everyone's like hanging off the bar, did not care, right? So like, good luck. I mean, I'm trained as a ballet and it's like, we're going to do, nobody cares. So like, where are the kids in the learning? Where's the learner in the learning? So if that gives them agency, that gives them opportunity, that gives them excitement. So as you pulled into, what are we going to do with this? What are we going to build with this? We can hook standards onto that. And, grades are, I mean, we could talk about grading forever, right? Grades are really just supposed to be for feedback. How do you know where you're at? And so really all of that exists so learners know how they're moving on their journey. So that's my answer. I don't know if that's too philosophical. I mean, figure out how much time you need, give them that time, move them ahead, and don't feel bad about taking the time to dream big because we're humans.
I agree. I mean, one of the reason why I'm such a proponent of the fact that there has to be a hybrid approach, and I think that this current situation we happen to be in forces that reality on classrooms, is that if things are online, I can respond at any time. If 1 in the morning, an idea comes in my head, hey, I'm going to add to that discussion. Boom, 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 boom. This is the idea I just had. Or I'm a music buff. I'm a hip hop head, and I'm a movie buff. You'll be watching something like that. That's really cool. For example, right, this is a blog post I'm working on right now. As I'm preparing for today's thing, I'm watching Dion Cole's stand up on Netflix. And if you are familiar with Dion Cole's NSFW, can't watch it at work, but hilarious comedian out of Chicago. And he does this bit for all of his stand-ups. All of them. He's like, all right, hey, I'm here. And I'm going to try some jokes for y'all tonight. And he takes a sheet of paper out of his pocket, and a pen. And who knows whether or not he has all the jokes written on the sheet of paper or not or whatever. But he's like, all right, cool. I'm gonna try these jokes out on y'all. If they don't work, I'm not gonna see you guys ever again in life anyway. So what? All right. And you're like, that's a pretty dope philosophy to have in a classroom. Like, not that you're not gonna see the kids the next day, but I'm gonna try this stuff out. If they work, great. If they don't work, we come back tomorrow and try something else, right? And I think that's having the situation where I had this conversation with my wife all the time. Well, you're always on your phone. You're always on this. I put the phone away and stuff. I lock in the man cave and we have conversations about stuff and whatnot as well. But being having access to inspiration outside of yourself anytime you want it, to me, is super important. I wish I would have had that as a kid. Cool, I like going outside with my friends and stuff like that. But there were some times where you were locked inside your own head, like when you can't go to sleep and you're like, all right, hey, this is an idea that I have, but I have no idea how to do it. Now you go on TikTok and somebody's made a 60-second video about this is how you do that thing that you had in your head last night. Oh, that's really dope. And some like 7-year-old has solved a problem for me that I was locked in my head before, right? So I think that a lot of the stuff as well is just kind of technology is neutral. I hate when people start talking about, oh, it's the reason why things are bad is because no, technology is neutral. But people bring themselves to the technology. You look on somebody's phone, you see what they value. You got cooking apps on there, you might be somebody who's learning how to cook. You got music on there, you may be a musician, whatever, right? So I think that's also important to kind of recognize that the digital stuff gives us a superpower that in previous iterations of the educational in education didn't exist, right? I don't know if anybody's watching Abbott Elementary School. If you have not watched Elementary, watch it. There's a hilarious scene of a projector, like when we go back to when you were in elementary school, the projector with the transparencies in there, and you're like, all right, dude, that's like one person could be up there. They wrote with the little Sharpie thing on there, and it got smudged all the time, and you couldn't read what they talk about.
Yes, I remember.
Anyway, Jeanine, we're almost finished with the design process. Prototyping.
Yes.
So, ideation. All right, cool. We got the ideation and whatnot. That daydream part. We need to put some legs on our daydreams, right? What does the prototyping process mean, and like what are some examples from your experience in terms of things that kids have created?
Prototyping is building to learn. So you make it. You make a version that you can make, right? Mm-hmm. I've worked with colleagues who are building apps, and they're trying to get something. It starts as something on a piece of paper, and they're just drawing out the user experience. When you go into this stage of the app, then it's this, and then this will happen, and then that'll happen. That's how they, prototype the technology. When we were building that show, which, by the way, we also came to the recognition that technology is neutral and humans can use it for better connection. We would start building, 6-8 counts of a dance. Let's see what it looks like. Let's understand how people are moving. What's the vibe? How does this feel with this music? Do we like where we're going with this? Oh, you know what? We like the movement. Don't love the music. Let's trade that out. Mm-hmm. Just like you're writing, okay, you've got a, an outline for your paper. Like, how do I start to pull a couple sentences, a paragraph together to see if I can start to capture what I'm thinking? So it's making your idea tangible as fast as you can and getting feedback on it before you build it all the way out, early and often, so that whatever you're doing, again, you're recalibrating it up against the empathy insights, the ideas, and you're getting feedback so that you're moving in the right direction, so that you don't build the whole thing and then go, that is not what I meant at all.
Like kind of always in beta, right? Always in that
living
beta
in beta, 100%.
So that's super, super important. And it's really illuminating when you bring it back to the writing process like you're doing, because I think that's something that most teachers are able to have some a conceptual understanding about. That's something we've all done, right? Yep. And that's another reason why I never graded my kids' writing, because you weren't finished with it. Like, hey, this is wrong. Great, go back and fix it. Like when you see the final process, I started as a journalism major at the University of Missouri, and I wanted to be Stuart Scott, rest in peace, was a guy that really inspired me as a kid. But, you start doing print work and everything like that. And when you start in those classes, it's not, this is wrong, it's fix it so we can print it. Like, and when it's fixed, we will print it. You don't know how many times that person's gone back and changed that stuff. famous authors still have editors, right? We don't know. Somebody else goes back and looks at Stephen King's work and says, no, this is not, no. We can rephrase that so this better conveys the idea that you're dealing with. So
Well, I want to point out what you said, fix it and print it. The print it part matters. The learning and
yes,
public part, the
yes.
sharing, the public, like, hey, there's a show, there's going to be iterations of people watching this along the way, and there will be an audience. I think that's another element of design thinking, that sort of like public, like building something for others to make your thinking tangible or to make your understanding real. That's powerful. That builds a collaboration, it builds community, and it also puts a pressure on. Let's be honest, when we have to make things authentic, when you have to do real work that matters for other people in public, like the stakes are different. And I think that's where, if I'm writing this thing for this teacher that I'm not super invested in, like whatever, but like I gotta be connected to what I built and how I understand this and how I'm making sense of it. Like that's like, it's like, going live on Facebook. Like you have to, like you've got to,
Yeah.
there's an element there's another element to what you're talking about. So I think that that's also exciting to kids and teachers because learning does matter, and we are doing real work that matters.
And that's
How do
why I
we make
think
it public?
the value of arts education that's something else that has to be integrated into your English class, into your science class, in your math because art is all about performance. It's all about putting it out there and saying, what do you think about this? Is it avant-garde enough? What is it saying to you? Whatever, right? There is a presentation piece that's there. And that's kind of where I'm a huge proponent, no matter what philosophy you're taking, that it is a product-based philosophy. The kid
Yes.
will end up making something and saying, hey, this is how I understood what you're talking about, and not from a test, but from a blog post or multimedia creation or a podcast or whatever it is. Here's how I understand what you were talking about. So yeah, I definitely appreciate that, Jeanine. And that last part, I always fuse testing and feedback into one thing.
Me too.
Some people take it and it's testing and then feedback. To me, that doesn't make a lot of sense, but it is what it is. But it's something that's often left out, right? If there's a piece that doesn't happen, it is we stop the prototyping because we don't have time for the testing and feedback, and not your teacher goes and grades your paper, but an opportunity again for you to present that work to the public and have people respond and say, oh, okay, that was the part that was people like this part, but they didn't like this part. Let's go back and let's change it. So how might we ensure that learners always have that iterative opportunity, that piece is built in? How do we do that?
Well, and I mean, it depends on your context. Like I'm starting from a dance perspective or a performing arts perspective. What's the showcase we're working towards, and what's going to be the feedback, and what's going to be the reflection process after the show? Because even though we went through all of this work to get that show up and we had all this feedback along the way, and we brought all the lighting rig in and we did all this amazing stuff, like, and then the audience came, they saw, they loved it, they didn't like it, whatever. Now there's this, what did we learn from this part? And like, how are we going to do the next one? And I think the fact that I said, I feel like this is like an infinite game. There's no finish line. Like that's the piece that matters, because whatever the prototype is that you build, whether it's the sketching of what the app's going to look like, or the 6 8 counts that become the 12 8 counts that becomes the piece as a part of the show, wherever you're at in that mini design process or that big one, you've got to test in public, you've got to get feedback, and you've got to say what's next. And I think that's what's so powerful, because learning, we all know, is not flat, it's complex and it's infinite. Yes. And so when you figure one thing out, you come up with another stumbling block, and we need to create space for that cyclical part of the work, the presentation, to inform the throw back into the jumbled mess and the humble curiosity and go, now where am I at? And that's I think that's the beautiful, messy part of being alive and being a creative person who can move through so much complexity, ambiguity, and nuance with at least the confidence. And this is where I didn't write the book Creative Confidence, but that's David E. Kelley, one of the founders at the D School and IDEO. How do we have the confidence to move through this very messy set of learning and trying and failing and building, and at least know that we can do it in a way that we're making progress?
Absolutely. I definitely appreciate that. That answer is it's spot on, in my opinion. Spot on. Excellent. So we're going to kind of look at Canvas now, right? So given all that setup, The question that I'm going to throw out there is, are we still teaching only the kids in the room, or should we default to what about the kid who's not there?
Well, and I just want to even say you said something earlier that really, you have an idea at 1 a.m. in the morning. Where's the space or the opportunity for the kid who's in the room to connect with the learning that was happening in that room outside of the room and feel like they can continue to iterate on their reflection and feedback? And I feel like that the dance teacher in me is actually very excited about Canvas, because while I wouldn't want to teach a contemporary Graham class on Canvas as a means of doing all of the learning, there's so much about connecting with the mindsets and the work and the learning and videoing pieces of choreography that could go up and get feedback that could really illuminate a design process that I think is incredibly exciting.
Absolutely. And my thing is equity, right?
Yeah.
If you do not utilize some digital framework in order to host conversation, to host material, etc., if I am not physically in the classroom, I physically am unable to learn. And we know with the high transit rate in Las Vegas, there's a very high probability that students are going to miss multiple days of school. If things are only done in person and never captured, archived someplace where I can say, I missed 3 days of school last week. What happened in those 3 days? I hated those questions when I was in the classroom, right? Hey, Mr. Lang, I was gone for the week. What will we do? Oh, we did a whole bunch of stuff. I don't have time right now to go and illuminate to you all of the things that you missed. It's not possible for my human brain to go take a minute by minute breakdown of all the 7 days that you missed, give that to you in an equivalent experience of a student who was actually there, right? And if you're talking about equity, who knows if the kid had COVID, if the kid was in Mexico, if the kid had to work another job, if you have all these mitigating circumstances. Again, the mitigating circumstances didn't matter why the kid wasn't there, but the fact that the student wasn't there puts them rather at a disadvantage when the technology exists to mitigate a lot of those issues. And it's not what we're going to look at today isn't like, let's build this like incredibly complex Canvas code. No, we're going to do it with one piece, one thing. And if I had to start from a Canvas course from scratch, I would only use this process. This is the only thing I would center in on, because if you were a Google Classroom user or you have other tools in your toolbox, you'll be able to apply those same tools in this space, right? So that's another thing that I really am adamant about in terms of advice for educators, especially perhaps who are newer to the tech integration space. Exploit the tool, don't let the tool exploit you. Go into the tool where these are the goals that I need to have this thing do, and I'm going to make it do what I want it to do. I am not going to have the tool dictate to me what my goals and my aspirations are. And if you go in with a plan, this is what I want my students to be able to discuss XYZ on Canvas. That is it. I'm not looking for all the other stuff. One thing, this is what I want to get really good at. And again, having that iterative process of, if this doesn't work, my goal didn't change. I just found a better way, a better solution to that problem. But if you have so many goals that suddenly, I'm trying to solve for all these different things, our likelihood of success is probably not going to be as high. So again, this is going to be, we talked about design, we talked about discussion. How do we apply that to that Canvas space? So let's take a look here. And Jeanine, again, any questions or anything, shoot them in the feed. The chat has been like really lively. Shout out to Mac Middle School, man. You guys are amazing. Shout out to Mac Middle School. All right, so let's take a look here, Jeanine. So this is the free version of Canvas. All right, so your Canvas course it's going to look pretty darn close to this, especially if you're a secondary school teacher. If you're an elementary teacher watching this, if you're in the Clark County School District, you have that new elementary look to your Canvas. In order to find this view, you're going to go to the top left-hand corner. It's going to say Manage Subject. You'll click that Manage Subject box. It'll be up here on your home page, and then it'll have that lovely left-hand side here. All right. So that'll be the deal. All right. So You might have pre-creative content already, especially if you're a math teacher in Clark County. You might have downloaded those things, or if there's a pre-creative course or something for whatever you're teaching, you might have downloaded those things already, which is great. Great thing about pre-created content is it's pre-created. I didn't have to make it. Bad thing about pre-created content is someone already made the design choices for you. So in terms of going back, and you'd have to go and do some a little bit of surgery on those modules and whatnot. But we're not going to talk modules very much today. We're going to rock and roll with the fact that modules exist, and this is a module, right? This is audiograms, and we've done some audiogram work before at edX. If you look on our Twitter chat, there's a audiograms kind of idea there. But you'll notice on the left-hand side it says discussions there, and that's where we're going to live, at discussions. All right, so we're going to click that discussions button, and when we do that, it's going to look like this. If you are a novice, even someone, I've been using Canvas for years, this is my favorite component because first, I want kids talking. All right. I want you to converse. I want you to converse in a space that I can see, that I can start observing who thinks what way. These people like to hang out. It gives you this really cool petri dish to start looking at things. The other reason why discussions are super cool, especially in secondary school, is you can have all of your sections of your class discussed together. So your first hour can benefit from the 5th hour's conversations, which can benefit from the 7th hours, etc. So you don't have these compartmentalized conversations. You have everyone talking to everybody. You have this really cool marketplace of ideas. I'm going to go back to J school with that. So this marketplace of ideas where people can go and say, hey, I never thought about that. I like what John in first period said. Let me steal that idea and integrate it into the idea that I already had. Or, Jill in 7th period said this really cool thing. When I was at Keller, that's the first thing we'd do at first period. After we'd have that discussion the previous day, first period, their whole job was to go through the previous day's discussion and I want you to find one nugget that you were like, hey, that's really dope. Or, I didn't know this person also liked BTS. I'm gonna DM that person because I love BTS and I want to learn what that person's favorite BTS song is. Like the number of kids who love Korean pop is just mind-numbing at this point. We had many discussions. That and anime are like I have so many I had to get a Crunchyroll subscription because the students were telling me about these animes I had no idea about. All right, so super dope. All right, so. But again, discussions, it doesn't take very much to build a discussion. Like it's literally like, here's question, here's prompt, go. And kids will go and generate their own stuff. And suddenly I've got all this action happening, and I did not have to learn how to use all the pieces of Canvas. It was literally like, here's discussion. Do what you do on TikTok, and kids take to it, right? So if you're someone who's hesitant about using Canvas, or you don't have, and I'm gonna get rid of this very quickly, don't have, you didn't do all the classwork and stuff, start at discussion. So when we're talking about discussions, basically, when you hit that button, it's going to be a big blue button at the top that says discussion with a plus sign on it. Bada bing. Google Classroom and Canvas are two totally different experiences. Google Classroom pretty much dictates to you what you can do and what you can't do. Canvas is a blank canvas, and that's as a person who's an artsy person, as a person who likes to experiment, this gives you a lot more space to play around and say, I want this to look a certain way. All right, which is, it's a good scary. And I like being terrified. That's why I like horror movies, because it's like, oh my God, that was really good. I had no idea that person was around that corner. I had no idea that she was really the monster or whatever, but it's kind of that good scary, right? So in terms of this situation here, topic title. Let's say design thinking is our topic title. Up here at the top, you're going to have all of your elements in order to build. And if you're a Clark County School District, you have one more that's not built in here, and that's going to be your Canvas Studio. And so Canvas Studio, you unfortunately, because I'm not in the district anymore, I don't have that. And the friends of mine who let me use their accounts, I'm not comfortable sharing that publicly. But there's it looks like a little box with a play button in the middle of it. And that box with the play button is your Canvas Studio. And we're going to be doing some PD on like live streaming through Canvas and stuff like that. And I'm going to have some special guests, CCSD teachers, that'll allow us to look at their pages and kind of see what's going on. But that's the one thing that you have on this page that's not here. All right. In terms of writing and stuff, you can change the headings, you can make paragraphs, all that wonderful stuff. But it's as simple, Jeanine, as I have a question. What do you eat as your comfort food? That is it. That is the question. All right. It could be complex. It could be something that's, pedagogically related to some content you guys are talking about. It could be a YouTube video. It could be whatever. What's your favorite comfort food? I'm big into music, so that first 2 weeks of class this year, it was, if you had one song you had to listen to repeat for 24 hours, what would that song be? So then you get, all these little weird, indie rock bands. You got punk, you got rappers, you got mariachi music, you got K-pop and stuff, and I just built them all into all the song recommendations. I built them all into a playlist on Apple Music, and I would play the clean versions of the songs so I could find them in class so the kids could be like, oh yeah, that's my song, or whatever. All right, bet. Cool. The cool thing about the discussions is it's easy to follow. So then it also showed value for me. I value your discussion and what you came up with and what you said, and this is my product of that value. Right? Here's this thing. Super cool. Now, let's just stay super simple right now, Jeanine. Here's that sentence. I'm going to go down to the bottom here and hit that save button. Mm-hmm. Cool. You'll see the reply button there. So I'm going to hit that reply button. And you'll see that as a participant, I'm looking at this as somebody who's responding to the discussion at this point. I can type myself. If you're in a Clark County School District, again, I could put links there. So if there's a links to a website or something, or here's a picture of that comfort food that I want or whatever, and I'm going to get to kind of some sexier ways to do this in just a second. In Clark County, kids also have Canvas Studio. So they can record a video as a response directly inside of Canvas. They don't need Flipgrid, which we're going to look at in a second, is something that's really awesome to do as well. But I don't need to necessarily move from Canvas in order to answer your question dynamically. All right. So you have all those things in there. It's really cool. I can add HTML, which I'm going to show you in just a second. It doesn't have to be a scary experience. It's really kind of straightforward. And also, Jeanine, I don't know if you've had this experience as well, but I look like a boss all the time because I deflect. Hey, who knows how to do X, Y, Z? In my mind, I have no idea how to do this thing, but I don't want them to know I don't know how to do this thing. Oh, Miss Leia, it's easy. All right, cool. Come up here and show everybody, because I want to make sure that you know how to do that. They go do some magic. Oh, that was really dope. That's exactly how I would do it. They go sit down and bada bing. Bob just explained to me, and I saved face. I don't have to say I didn't know how to do X, Y, Z, but also in your mind, you have to reconcile with the fact that you don't know how to do all the things, and these are kids who are digital natives who can get around firewalls and VPNs and all kinds of stuff like that. But I digress. Anyway, I could type my answer. I love to eat poutine. My poutine shop, I used to have an authentic Canadian that used to live in our neighborhood. She closed her spot because her husband got sick. I was so sad. I used to eat poutine like 3 times a week. It's wonderful. All right, cool. Now, I could have kids reply to that reply. I could have the kids reply to my initial post. But if some other kid loves to eat poutine, or, hey, logical question. No. And suddenly we have this conversation happening between two people who might not know each other in this conversation. And this is a safe place for that conversation to happen. I am observing what's going on. I can see, again, people's food choices, what they dig. You find out all kind of little weird things on accident about kids when they just have an opportunity to discuss things. All right. So super cool. Yep, Karen, right on. I got poutine fans in the chat. That's what I'm talking about. All right. So cool. It could be that simple. Right? That's just kids typing text. I think most of us would be able to do that instantaneously, right? No, there's no sexiness to that whatsoever. All right. Questions, comments, concerns, issues. Is that like, we're not blowing your mind yet, I'm hoping. So that's where we are.
No,
Jeanine, question?
no. I mean, I feel like, and I feel like, kids do this all the time on social media too. So
Absolutely.
they're having those conversations and discussions. If only there was a like or heart button, but that's okay.
Oh, we can like and heart. We can add those definitely in Clark County. You have all those things. You can have you could really make this dynamic. So actually, I'm going to go back, given that. So I'm going to delete that. I'm going to delete this entry as well. And we're going to go back and kind of deal with what Jeanine just said. So I'm going to scroll down. So that's just like a pure discussion, but I have some options here. This is why discussions are the best thing to start with in Canvas. I can allow threaded replies. So I can have kids go forever, an infinite loop of replies to somebody. Do I want that? Check. I always, always, always put user must post before seeing replies. I don't want you cheating. So I don't want you stealing ideas without contributing something, even something zany and just like whatever, because this is a way for my introverted friends to be able to communicate with people without having it. I don't have to talk. I don't have to do video. But you have to contribute to the conversation. What I don't want you to do is be a leech. And suddenly you don't ever give ideas. You just take other people's stuff and then, hey, look at what I did. No. So I usually put, you got to post something in order to see what other people do. All right. Enable podcast feed. It'll come right to you, just like a podcast with all these rolling answers and things like that. It's really kind of cool. All right. I want to include the students' replies in my podcast feed. Grade it? Absolutely. And what I used to do this for grading is it was just complete or incomplete. No points. I just want to see if you contribute to the conversation or not. And I usually did this as bell work. I did this also as an attendance check. If somebody, I put the kid in and said the kid was here, I would go back in the discussion. Did he contribute to the discussion? Oh, he didn't contribute to the discussion. That kid absolutely possibly wasn't here. I would reconcile my attendance this way as well. But you could grade it as points, a letter grade or whatever. I just kept it complete and incomplete. I did not want kids to think that their sharing was going to be evaluated in some kind of, process that way. You may think differently, do what you do. But allow liking, Jeanine? Absolutely, I can allow liking. All right. I'd never sort by likes because, again, it becomes a situation where I don't want the thing I don't like about social media is sometimes that liking thing kind of like messes with people's heads and I'm posting for likes, right? That's kind of that thing. Don't want you to post for likes. I want you to post a genuine understanding, genuine concept of how you're feeling, all right? So don't want to do that. Bada bang, all right? This is a group discussion. You could have a group discussion set up and you can build that group set in there. It's a set inside of Canvas where you can assign groups. These 5 kids are going to be together, et cetera, et cetera. You can allow self-sign up and you can say, yo, I want 5 groups and limit the groups to 4 members. And Canvas will do the rest for you. So they'll put them in groups so they have those conversations. So if you want to do that collaborative, again, what Jeanine kind of hit very, very hard in that design thinking situation, that collaborative thing is where you get a lot of those ideas. I can have you sit in smaller groups or meet in smaller groups in order to do discussion. So again, this is a way you can do your class without having to fool with modules and how this and things are flying in. It's just everything's in discussion. Everybody's posting stuff. All right. You can also require peer reviews and what the things in terms of ideation and prototyping and testing and feedback. I would have kids post a discussion and then require peer review. A kid is going to go look at your stuff and say, hey, this is really I like this a lot. My experience with your Google Sheet or your slideshow or whatever was this. And what I think you can really, improve upon is these other things. I can automatically assign them by saying, hey, I want 2 kids to look at everybody's thing. And they're going to do it by a certain date if you would like. Or I can manually do it and say, I want John to be with Jill and Jose to be with Susan and whatever. All right. You can assign this to everybody. You can assign it to certain sections, all that wonderful stuff. If you're teaching multiple sections, do that. You can add a due date to it and you can say, hey, I just want you to have this available for this week. So it's going to be from January the 16th through January the 22nd or whatever. After that, it's going to lock itself down. All right. This is where you start, in my opinion. The modules and stuff are really cool, but you can do everything in a module that on the discussion page. Everything that you want to do on this one page. And you would have the organic conversation back and forth with students being seen and being heard. It's going to allow you to as Jeanine kind of said, to have the kids represent themselves in their work in a more organic way, in my opinion. Jeanine, anything to add?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm just processing this. And so like if I'm and I do use Canvas. I teach a class at UNLV that uses Canvas, and but it's pre-designed, and I'm thinking about actually building one. So this is really helpful to me right now. Um, you could just, I mean, if I don't have content and videos and modules built, I could post a prompt with a link and to a video and boom, and then say, here's what I want you to respond. I get 40 responses in there. We can start conversing. I can start saying, okay, now what are you going to build? Like, here's the empathy interview guide. Like, I want you to interview these people around X, Y, and Z. And all of this can be done in discussions. Like, I don't actually have to build modules. So if I'm a classroom teacher and I'm living my life in the classroom, but I want to make this accessible, I can really just create a discussion link around the content that day, have people respond to that and post stuff there. And that's a really quick, easy way to make all of my stuff accessible and also interactive and also alive in one space without
So,
me having to do a ton of work. Like, I don't
and
have to like build up. Okay.
absolutely, and you don't need to
I didn't
link to
actually, yeah,
anything.
I love that.
Here's your YouTube channel, right? Cool. All right, so great. In Canvas, you're gonna have that Canvas studio. All you need to do is copy that and upload the Canvas studio. I'm gonna do it the other way. I'm gonna use this embed code, so I'm gonna click that and I'm gonna copy that. All right, and this is the where everyone should know a little enough HTML to be dangerous. All right, and so you'll see down in the bottom right hand corner, that's the raw HTML editor. All right, you don't really need to be super fancy in order to deal with it. You can do that. You can do it there, or you can also, you'll have that little cloud that's there on the end of your row there. That cloud is also your embed. So you can just paste your embed code in there, hit the submit button, and then that's YouTube videos right there. The kids don't even have to leave the discussion. You give the instructions, watch the YouTube video, and comment about why Martin Luther King loved Atlanta so much, or whatever it was, or how do you see yourself in the same vein as Martin Luther King, or whatever it is, and you would have that stuff right there, right? So you literally do not need to. This is again why I say even if you're someone who's a seasoned Canvas user, the discussions to me are so dynamic because they're so simple and easy to utilize, and you don't need to learn all the other pieces. You just need to learn this one thing. Kids go right to this when they come into class, and the kids knew this one that. Well, I was at Keller. Come into class, I immediately go to discussions. That's where my bell work is. That's where our instructions are. Boom. I put my headphones in. There's a video of Mr. Lang talking about XYZ, this and that, or there's an example that Mr. Lang has created, and you need to be able to duplicate this example with your team. Move your desk to wherever in the room and handle your business, whatever it was. But it is it's a Canvas hack in that this is not really how the Canvas people envision the tool to be used.
Sure.
But the discussion things is you can have an entire course in which you build no modules and the kids still learn tons, right? So to me, it works. All right. Couple tools that I would definitely be, interested in utilizing if I were you. All right. So you can use all your Google stuff, and that's just embedding the things and whatnot, and whatever. But let's be a little sexy. Let's be a little provocative, Jeanine. A little provocative. All right. So first, let's say Kahoot, right? People have used Kahoot. I'm going to continue it for free. So I want to start the class off with that Kahoot thing, right? I want a situation where perhaps we're going to start our class off with a rehashing of the previous day's lesson, and I want them to play the little game or whatever. This is not going to work for your live game. This will work for that homework function in Kahoot. It'll also work for that same function in Quizzes if you're a Quizzes user, or GymKit. GymKit, it will work, and if you're not a GymKit fan, oh my God. Or GymKit, my favorite gamified type situation. The kid, he created it as a high schooler. It's super. I'm just gonna bring it up really quickly. It costs $60, but it is worth every last one of every last dollar. He was a high school student. He saw a need. He created this product. So he used the design thinking process. He created this product. There's also a writing thing that's connected to it. It's a $60 value. It is wonderful. I love GymKit, or GimKit as he calls it. GymKit is what I refer to it as. But anyway, so I've got the Kahoot. I'm going to go and I'm going to go to that library, not library, it's Discover. All right, so I've got all this premium stuff, right? So say I want a Star Wars house also. Shout out to Cynthia. Yes, we are both gym kit lovers. Awesome. All right. So exploring dramatic languages with C3PO, interesting. Let's use that one. So I'm going to click that. So I'm teaching a German class, and I'm like, I want my kids to review whatever this stuff is saying on this thing. I have no idea. Jeanine, you speak any German?
No.
Jetsch Gleich, I think, is the only thing I know. That's right now. Donnerstag is
I
Thursday.
can speak English. That's it.
When
Yeah.
I lived
No.
in Spain, the only MTV channel we got was German MTV, so I kind of like muddled my way through it, but it is what it is. All right, so here's this thing, right? So I'm going to go to that assign button. When I hit that assign button, I'm going to say, I want this to be, whatever. It's got to be done before the 25th at 5 p.m. Here it is. Question timer on, that's fine, whatever, create. Here's this thing. Now, got a problem. If you notice, it says other ways to share. Google Classroom is there, but do you see the Canvas logo? It is not there. Fiddlesticks, fiddlesticks, fiddlesticks. How can I get this thing to my students in Canvas? All right. So again, I told you, you need to know enough HTML to be dangerous. There is a tool called the iframe generator. Totally free, doesn't cost you any money. Not at all. All right. And iframe generator is my best friend when I'm doing with Canvas, because my job as the designer is to I don't want my students to have to navigate away from Canvas, because there's a likelihood they won't come back to Canvas, right? Might be a little difficult for them, especially, again, I always think when you're designing, design for the 5-year-old. That's who you're designing for. You're not designing for your grade level student if they're not 5. How would a kindergartner do this? And if a kindergartner could do it, then everybody else is going to, they'll be able to muddle through it, right? Here's my Kahoot. And what I want is that URL. So I'm going to hit that copy URL button and go to iframe generator. And I'm going to call this German Kahoot, just for kicks and giggles. Width, always make my width 1200. Always make my height 800. Generally, that's going to fit in the screen. Even on your Chromebooks, that's going to work pretty well. If the kid's on a phone, that's going to work pretty decently as well. And I'm going to see where it says iframe URL. I'm pasting that URL right there. This will work about 90% of the time. There are some websites, because essentially this is a security breach because we're taking content from a place and embedding somewhere else. A lot of websites, they don't really care that you hijack their code. Apple, Google, and stuff like that, they have their own ways to embed safely, but Kahoot does not have, so I do it this way. In order to make sure that this works, you're going to always, without fail, hit that preview button first. Big green button, you hit that preview button, and bada bing, it shows you, there's my Kahoot. Awesome, success, there's my thing. I want my kids to play that as they come in the classroom, so I'm good. I'm going to hit that generate, and I'm going to see that gobbledygook that is my HTML, and I'm going to copy it. Bada bing. I'm going back to my course, and I want my kids to play this as a discussion. So they can discuss as they're going through. They're playing the game, the discussion. Hey, that question was really hard or whatever. How do I do that? I can use my raw HTML editor or my cloud here. I'm going to use the raw HTML editor this time, Jeanine. And I'm going to paste that and then paste it back. And my Kahoot is there. So then the kids can play the Kahoot. You can have your instructions and say after you finish the game, I want you to respond with one question that really stumped you. Or a question that should have been added to the Kahoot that you didn't think was there. If you had to redo this Kahoot, what questions would you add to it? Now I've got my questions for my next Kahoot, crowdsourced for my students. I don't got to make another one. I just copy and paste some questions in there, and God bless America, right? So totally works, not a problem. Hit the save button. I give it to the kids. I tell kids, again, my instruction was always, when I was standing at the door, holding the door, doing the hallway monitoring, you're in there, kids were already working. The other thing is you would have kids who were, unfortunately, in other classes already contributing to discussion, like, hey, mister, this is really cool. I can't wait to get to your class. It adds that level of excitement that perhaps, kids want. I'm being heard. I'm allowed to communicate in your class, et cetera, et cetera. All right. Super dope. Questions, comments, concerns, issues. What do you think, Jeanine?
Well, I love it. And I mean, as somebody who would be is thinking about this, like I'm most excited about interacting with my kids in my dance class. This feels like a very easy way for me to capture what's happening in there. Take a video from what we did in class, and we videoed all the time for feedback and for self-assessment. Like very easy for me to like put this up and add this component, and then like, oh my gosh, I had kids bring journals back and forth all the time. Like this would be so much easier because they could log it in from anywhere. It's all kept in one collective space. Like I'm just feeling about like the reflection, the discourse, and like capturing the feedback between everybody. It just feels very easy to do this.
All right, cool. So the other thing is we're a GIF and meme culture, man. Kids like making memes. They like making GIFs. So
Yes.
I always gave them at least one prompt a week where it's like, dude, how you feeling? I want only GIFs. I don't want no typing or anything. So great. So kids can make GIFs, and if you want to learn how to do that, there's tons of YouTube videos. I do. That's one of my things. I always the beginning of my school year. There are two things that every kid had. They had to have a brand, so and I'm going to kind of show you where you could do that at very quickly. And they also had to be able to create a GIF from anything, a movie, a cartoon, from their own pictures, all that wonderful stuff. All right. So the resolution do 1200 width by 800 height, and that's generally going to give you, what you need. So Giphy, right? It gets to the firewall. They don't need to do anything. I'm going to say, I feel happy today. So cool. Okay, man, I've got, Baby Yoda is the joint, right? And what you will see is, bada bing, my embed code is already there for me. I click. Now, for your high school and your middle school friends and our upper middle elementary school friends, it's always keep it school appropriate, please. We don't want to, whatever. Generally, kids don't do anything silly because they know that this ability will be taken away from them. And suddenly they're like, oh my God. You want to put responsive on, and responsive just means the GIF is going to move in the shape of the screen it's being played on. So I don't want this to only be available in full on a computer or whatever. If you're on your phone, which a lot of us are, right? I want you to be able to look at that GIF in full. So I'm going to copy the code that's there. I'm going to go back to my class, to my discussion. I'm actually going to save this one, Jeanine, really quickly. Let's hit that save button. Pretty please. I don't want to do campus support. It's being silly. Get that out the way. Let's hit the save and publish. Save and publish. I'll save and publish it. Give it a second. Oh, I didn't create a group. I don't want to put the group. That's why it didn't let me do it. Save. All right, cool. So again, your kids can also reply with code, and a lot of your kids are going to know HTML. There are kids who've done this. You see the little cloud right there? I click the little cloud. I paste my gift in there. Hit submit. Give it a second. Larger file. Now, one of the things that always happened when I was in the district firewall is that, again, the larger files is going to take a while for those things to download. Tell kids, hey, yo, just be patient. It'll be okay. If it doesn't pop up immediately, and there's my Baby Yoda. That's how I feel today. All right, cool. Again, talking about social emotional health. It's a cool way to kind of just really quickly checking in your kids. Hey, this is how I feel. This is whatever. And it doesn't have to go beyond that conversation. You can go check in physically with that kid. Yo, Jill, I saw that you had like the angry face emoji off of, or the angry face character off of, what's the Disney movie, Pixar movie with all the emotions?
I don't know the name of it.
I totally forgot what the name is. Anyway, kids use that all the one. The angry person that's on that, they use that all the time. Cool. Yo, go in the back. Everybody's doing their work. Hey, Cindy, you all right? You good? You need some counselor or whatever? Nah, Mr. Lime just belongs to thing. Can I listen to my music? And they go put their little, thrash rock on there, and they're good by the end of the period or whatever it is. All right. So that Giphy, adding gifts, really, really cool way to, give kids kind of an opportunity to create with Inside Out. Thank you, Melissa. You're amazing.
Yes.
And Roxanne, you're amazing as well. So, so that gives them an opportunity to do all those things, very, very quickly. And again, it's not just typing. It is I I can tell you how I feel in a different way, which is always dope. All right. So, Jeanine, questions, comments, concerns, issues. What do you think?
Oh, I just love it. It's fun. It's interactive. It's light. It doesn't always have to. I mean, I just feel like the general conversation around like Canvas, digital learning, it's very heavy. It's like, oh, it's this huge lift. And like what I love, you said it's a Canvas hack. It's like, we're not even using Canvas to the degree that it was designed to be used, but like, here's a way to start using it right now. Small, simple steps. Kids can engage and create things that they like. We can embed videos, we can capture learning, we can take a feedback protocol we're already doing in person, put it on here, and it lives for the rest of the year. People who are absent can come see it. They can engage with those important pieces. Like, it's just such an easy way to just start doing blended learning without having to make a huge lift. And like that's what's resonating with me, because I do find a lot of this, and I know we have a lot of experts in the room who have moved beyond finding it intimidating, but I still find it intimidating, especially as I think of myself as like a convener of humans and a dance teacher. Like, what roles, like, I really feel like if I can see value in this as a teacher of the arts, then like so many classrooms in different disciplines could value showing up like this to increase discourse.
And it's not
whether they're in the room or not.
And something you said previously, like, it's not a binary thing. It's all digital. It's all in person.
No.
It is definitely a continuum, right? There's a way to blend these things together so that, again, I think the default should be, what happens if a kid is not there? If the discussion is online, I can still, even if I come 3 days later, that discussion is still there. I can go back and say, oh man, they talked about this. I know about whatever. And suddenly that kid can still be a contributor. But if it's only in person, who is archiving those conversations?
No, I mean, when you think about the brilliance that comes up, that sends a classroom on a tangent with a conversation, to be able to like have that rooted in a space and be able to revisit that. I mean, that's almost just like a portfolio of learning from a teacher's perspective. You can
Absolutely.
go back. Everybody could go back over the course of a quarter and go, let's look at the conversations we had. What were the questions we were asking? I mean, this is such a rich metacognitive tool. And again, they're looking at their own questions. They're not looking at somebody else's questions. They're looking at their questions, their discussion, their insights. That's appealing because it's, again, identity, building the community. It's so easy. Like, I'm just like looking at this. I'm like, oh, yes.
And what you said about the portfolio, this is how I used it. So up in the top, I created a naming convention. So it would be January 15th or whatever today is. Is it 15th, 14th, 14th. So the kids would know immediately, this is the day we was at, this is the date, and this is what we're dealing today. Today we're going to start talking about looking at different people's logos. The McDonald's logo, what does that portray? Why does Pepsi's logo look like that? The Nike swoosh, when you hear that, what does that look like? Whatever. Kids are all contributing. I like this logo. I love BTS's logo. I think this logo, whatever. All that stuff is there. And again, because all your sections can contribute to one discussion, it is not segmented brainstorming. It's not a segmented discussion. All of your sections are contributing to the other sections. So it doesn't matter what class period I have you, I am benefiting from your first. And I'm going to tell you, keep it 100, right? When I first started teaching middle school, I started middle school at West Prep. I taught English. My first period was always my experimental period. I have no idea how any of this stuff is going to work. We throw it out there. Second period, I found what I did wrong the first hour, and I corrected it. Second period, I have better experience. By third period, I'm like, I know exactly what I can cut time off here. I can do whatever. Fourth period, after lunch, I'm like, oh my God, I'm tired. I've done this 3 times. You know, it's still cool, but it's not as... By the end of the day, I'm done, right? Super done. This way, when I use this, I didn't have to really do anything the entire day because I set it up and I let Phil Schlechte has this wonderful thing where he says, let the workers do the work.
Do the work. Yes.
I am no longer the engine of the classroom. You are, my friend. I will sit and facilitate and observe, but Mr. Lang ain't doing. I already know how to do this. Why am I doing it 7 times or 6 times or 5 times or whatever? So it is what it is. This way, every kid gets the same experience no matter what class they happen to be in, right? But let's do something called a 20-second podcast. All right. And I love these, Jeanine, because kids using their authentic voice is hilarious. All right. Because you'll have your comedians, you'll have your songstresses and songsters, you'll have the kids who are like beatniks. You have all kind of weird stuff that pops off. So if you're not familiar with 123 apps, super cool, totally free, doesn't cost you anything. If you're working on Chromebooks are really limited in terms of the creative tools that are available natively. And again, I'm a Apple Distinguished Educator. I'm an Apple person. I ride or die with the iPad. But if you got to have the Chromebooks, 123 apps, I think is indispensable. So there are video tools. So if you need to trim video for free, you need to crop video, rotate it, all that kind of stuff. If you happen to come by a rogue video that has somebody else's logo on it, you can take the logo off. You can add images to things. You can record video in this as well. So if your kids need a stopgap video recorder on their Chromebook, you can record video native on your Chromebook, and should be a lot better experience than just like the fuzzy camera that comes with their Chromebook. But the audio tools is what I want to show you. So cool. I'm going to have a situation where I want to record my voice. So I'm going to click that record voice. I'm going to click this, and I'm not going to let the sound come through because it's going to muddle everything, but click that. Hello, this is Mike Lang, and I am doing a demonstration very quickly. One button, the kid talks. Now, always great to have the kids do some pre-writing and stuff. I want you to do the podcast, but I want you to write a haiku that explains to me why David is such a powerful sculpture piece, given that we watched the video yesterday. All right, bet. And then the kids have their script, and you read your script into the thing. I'm going to hit the save button, and this will work perfectly in your deal. I'm going to say this is a demo thing. All right, cool. There we go. Rock and roll. All right. Doesn't cost me anything. It's that simple. I record, I download, finish. Now, how do I integrate that into my discussion? So, write a haiku explaining X. This is great for explaining X. Great for anything. Kids like to be offered different opportunities, and then when you show them all the things, then you're like, hey, I want you to respond to this prompt anyway. You can use audio, you can use video, you could use a meme, you could use a GIF, whatever. At the beginning, I really kind of hedge kids into certain ways of being creative so that everyone knows how to do those things in those ways, and then give them that freedom afterward. But anyway, I'm going to go and I'm going to attach that video to my deal here. So I'm going to see that I have this like weird, looks like a play button and a little music note that's there. Click that, and it says, yo, from my computer, I can drag right there. I just drag the file right to where I need to drag, or I can click on it and find it. All right. I can also record directly into that space. So if, as oftentimes that happened, if you're sitting in your car and you're like, dog, I forgot to do that. I take my phone really quickly, record. Hey, this is Mr. Lang. And today we're going to do X, Y, Z, that, whatever. Save the video, upload it in, bada bang, I'm good. All right. Like literally, this is I'm late for work, and I'm like driving down the highway, and I need to think of some stuff. I can park in the highway or park while I'm getting my coffee at McDonald's and record my intro for my whole class on video, boom, 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 and upload it right onto the thing. Here's the intro. We're good to go. It saved my bacon multiple times. Jeanine, anything to add?
I also love the idea that you can be prepping the videos from wherever, whenever. It also is fun for, I think, young people to see teachers not always in their classroom.
Absolutely.
I think it's a way to kind of, I think that's been a lot of conversations I've had, being able to, hey, you're at a house, you have a family. Like, it's also a way to just kind of humanize, the teacher if you're talking about something, relate, whatever, like we can be in places of the community making a video about it, uploading it, and then also like kids could upload, students can upload things that they see around their community as a response in a discussion. I'm just seeing like multiple ways to really engage learning outside of the classroom, so it keeps happening anytime, anywhere. I love it.
One of my favorite discussion prompts was a prompt that I gave at the end of a class, and I said, I want you to take a picture of something you find interesting on your way home. And so kids took their phones and stuff, and you had pictures of ripped bus seats. You had like wilted flowers. You had weird kids were like doing all kind of little strange stuff. And then we came back the next day, like explain to us why this is the thing. Oh, I just thought it was cool because the light was hitting it this way, and I just wanted to really, especially when you're talking about upper elementary, secondary kids, they've got phones. That means they have a video recording multimedia studio in their pocket generally. Utilize that to death. I hate when people are like, the cell phones are the worst thing in the world. Well, I can again, technology is neutral. I can show you how to use that cell phone to do all kinds of stuff. Kids knew when they came in the classroom, they didn't have to put their cell phone away. And again, there's certain teachers going to have like different philosophies on that or whatever. But I work better when I got music. I like listening to music with my headphones. I think a lot of people like that dig that. The kids would put their headphones on. As long as you were doing the work, what do I would stop them, and this is the other thing I'm going to show you in a second. I would stop them at different points and say, look, fam, hey, yo, what's the progress check? All right, mister, I need like 5 more minutes on XYZ. I'm still, using the graphics on this thing. Just give me a second, Mr. Lane. Whatever. And kids generally, if you treat workers like valued employees, the valued employee generally does what you want them to do. But if you like the draconian stuff, as a teacher, you know how we rebel. I mean, my wife is an administrator. It was difficult marrying the enemy. Like, seriously. It was difficult. I'm soldiering through, but it was difficult.
Glad you made peace.
If you tell me to do something, I'm gonna be like, okay, how you making this? This is mandated. Oh, word. We gonna see how mandated this is, right? So anyway, there's my submission. There's my sound there. It's one of the things I used to do all the time with kids, just have sound, because speaking and listening is also in the standards, right? I don't want you to see anything. I just want you to put the headphones on, and I want you to listen intently as to what needs to happen. All right. So kids can also respond there. The other thing in discussions that's super powerful is tabs. And this is simply a Google search. If you type tabs in Canvas, and we're getting close to our time here, you're going to see all these things, right? Cool, wonderful. My favorite is, where's my man at? Humble doesn't do it well. Where's my guy at? My guy's not here anymore. That sucks. All right, let's see if they have it here. Here we go. So it's just HTML code. You don't need to learn how to do it. And my man, let me see if I can find my guy. Let me see if my guy is here. Yes, here he is. So if you type, just Google search, that's not my guy. Hold on. SEO sucks. Anyway, Humboldt University has one as well. All right. All you need to do is copy the code. You don't need to learn how to build squat. All right. And theory, I don't like how this guy's tabs are set up, but it is whatever. Oh, this person's tabs are set up, but it is what it is. So I'm gonna copy that, and I'm gonna paste it into my deal. All right, and I'm gonna save and publish really quickly. And you see how it puts tabs on the page for me? So I can say task 1, task 2, task 3. I don't need to build modules. I can just keep everything discussion. First, you're going to go respond to X, Y, and Z. Then you're going to do this. So how do we do that? I'm going to unpublish this to be the last thing we kind of rock and roll with. So I'm going to go into my HTML here, and I'm going to say, so this is how you can get around having to build multiple pages in modules. All right, and I'm going to take that. I'm going to copy this again because I want them to do the Kahoot first. So I'm going to go back to my page, and I'm going to go right between those two, and I'm going to paste that. All right, cool. Just to prove this works. So see that says task one of the Kahoot is there. If I switch it, it goes to a different thing. I can put all those. I can teach my entire classroom discussion. Yo, task one, do that. Then I want you to do that next thing. Then I want you to do that last thing. All right. I don't need the modules because I can teach through the discussion. And I also don't have to be bothered, right? So that's my other thing. I tell kids all the time, Mr. Lang enjoys his coffee. When we were pre-COVID, I'm walking around drinking my coffee. If you've got a question here, it doesn't have to, you can type your question right inside this thing and say, yo, and I'm going to see that because I'm subscribed to it. Also, our EL friends who perhaps are going to have difficulties expressing themselves in English and you don't know Spanish, they can Google Translate and paste that Google Translate right inside of this thing. And then I can say, all right, bet. Now I can translate that thing out. Now I know what Juan is trying to tell me. Bet. Let's go. Rather than trying to go have this like broken conversation where I'm trying to be pointing to stuff. Nah, B, put the Google Translate in there and then let's rock and roll. All right. The other thing in terms of definitely in terms of secondary people, and this is I'm going to unpublish this because this is the other thing this is another strategy I utilized. Upper elementary, and I've even done this with first graders, is this. If you're not a Pomodoro adherent, you need to join the movement. I don't want you to bother me. That is my whole mantra. I'm going to give you the skills that first month. I'm going to be in your face that whole first month, giving you the processes by which you can be self-sufficient in Mr. Lang's class. All right, you got a problem, we know how to fix it. My students, it's a 52-minute class or whatever it is. They got 2 20-minute work sessions and 1 10-minute break. We would go through. I can go and I can edit this. So I don't want it to be 25 minutes. So it'll be 20 minutes. All right, cool. Each kid has their own Pomodoro timer. You hit that start button. I can say, okay, my tasks today are get my logo done. That's going to be my first Pomodoro. My second is going to be work with my group to determine our theme song. Those are the 2 things I got to get done today. And again, I role model this the first month of school. Those are the 2 things you're going to get done, fam. You're going to set your Pomodoro timer for 20 minutes. Hit that start button. When the deal is done, great. Short break, we change the short break from 5 minutes to 10 minutes. You can go on your phone, you can check your social media, you can listen to your song. I don't give a darn what you do for the 10 minutes. It's your 10 minutes. It's your cigarette break, so to speak. Do what you need to do, and then that next 20 minutes, you hit that timer and you rock and roll. First couple of weeks, the kids are kind of like, this is interesting. By the third week, it's like, I can do what I want as long as I get these 20 minutes. But yep, you got 10 minutes to do what you want. All right, bet. I take the last 2 minutes for any questions or anything the kids have to deal with. We rock and roll. Now, the cool thing I like Pomo Focus, why I like this one as opposed to other Pomodoro timers, is I can copy that. I can go to my iframe generator. I can paste that bad boy in there. I can preview it. Yes, it works. Awesome sauce. I'm going to copy that. I'm putting that right into that discussion topic, fam.
Perfect.
So hit that edit. I'm going to go to task 2 here. Oops. Paste that bad boy. Oops. Save and publish. So after they do that, oops. Oh, I didn't regenerate my code. Hold on. Nice to generate the code now. Copy it. My bad. I'm going to edit that. And the cool thing about it is if your kids don't all have headphones, that's one of the things I made sure that students knew that they needed for my class. You need headphones because we're going to be constantly in need of your own sound and your own space and whatnot. Task one, task two. There's my Pomodoro timer. The kids do what they need to do. And they can edit it right inside here. So I can go and I can add those things right here. And I don't need to go to Pomo Focus. We had kids who started to do this. And they were like, I do it in all my classes now, Mr. Lane. Yes, it's a great way to kind of give yourself some mental health breaks. Yes, I know I'm working for 20 minutes. And after that, I get to chill. There was a young man who was, I didn't know even know he was in special ed student, great kid, was really, really into stuff. He was like, hey, Mr. Lane, I love that because I know exactly when I can go and play video games. Exactly, bro. I don't care what you do for your 10 minutes. I'm not going to regulate your 10 minutes. It's not going to be, what's the thing they do with they dance and stuff? Go noodle.
Brain break.
Do whatever you want for the 10 minutes. You do what you need to. Handle your business, all right? So, lots of information inside there. We're going to be doing more and more of these things and try to help you all in the classroom, the front lines. Again, my heart is always in the classroom. I go in generally once or twice a week. So if you're somebody who needs to volunteer in your class or wants to volunteer in your class, reach out. We'll try to make that happen. I usually go in once or twice a week at least to go and help people out and whatnot. But if I am you with Canvas, live in the discussions because, like Jeanine kind of alluded to, your portfolio is there. It's also great for your observation. When your administrator comes in, I don't got to go through here's all of what my kids are doing in their own words. This is their own words, their own things that they're producing here in an unabashed and raw and organic way that suddenly that puts a very human face on what's happening in your classroom rather than here was this assessment that this kid took and got a 75. Okay, great. All right. Excellent resources sped. Absolutely, Sandra. Excellent resources sped. Really loved, again, Canvas to me is how you help kids reach self-regulation. I want you to be able to tell me when it hurts. I want you to be able to tell me when this is good. I also want you to be able to go at your own pace. Here's the stuff. If you want to do the discussion at 1 in the morning, the discussion is there. Handle your business, fam. Not a problem for your boy. I'll go through and I'll see it. I'll ding, ding. I'm usually up at 1 o'clock in the morning anyway. Ding, ding. All right, cool. I've had full-fledged conversations on discussion boards about, generally it's about music. Some of the music the kids listen to now is so whack. Like, they're like, hey, Mr. Like, so-and-so's the best rapper. No, he's not the best rapper. I love Travis Scott. That's good. Travis Scott's not better than Nas. Anyway, but it is what it is. In terms of our hustle, generally follow us on the social medias and stuff. We're all over the place now. The hustle website is coming up. It'll be back. We'll try to get those out to CCSD teachers and to your administrators and stuff like that to kind of do things. We're going to try to do these at a regular cadence. I think Friday is what we kind of have done. We did this kind of as an emergency because CCSD teachers had some time today, so we decided to kind of throw it out there. But you generally, so you can watch them live, but we'll do these after school, so or have them stream after school, so you can contribute and whatnot. All right. So, any closing thoughts, Jeanine? Ideas? Reflections?
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking about all the ways, like in a school community now, that you can utilize Canvas for ongoing conversation. That's like a staff development tool. That's a culture builder. There's ways to be engaging, collaborating in discussions with your PLC team in reasonable, in really real time, quick, easy ways that allow the conversation and the learning to happen all the time and that's always the challenge, right? When do we have time? We never have enough time. We don't have enough time to plan, collaborate. It should be built in. It's not. But that being the case, this is a way to be able to augment it really quickly. And yeah, no, it's exciting. It's exciting to me. And I feel like I always learn so much from you too. So thanks for the conversation and also just the easy tools and tips to be able to use.
Be biased toward action. And even if it doesn't look perfect, is it ready to ship? Yes. Yep. We can throw it in there and the kids will respond to it. One of the things that I was really reticent about was you get this imposter syndrome, right, Jeanine? Like, is mine compared to other people? You got to forget that, kind of throw the ego on the side. And generally, you are your student's hero anyway, right? You are this bigger than life personality. They generally are going to be like, you're an amazing person no matter what happens. And so kind of just leverage that. And really trick them into believing that you're this magic person when they're doing all the work. And that is like I grind the first 3 weeks of school and get all those processes. So like the rest of the school year, I'm like, hey, all I got to do is set the projects up, and the kids will do the rest of the work. And you usually get a couple worker bees that are really like, hey, Mr. Lang, I'm gonna do. Cool. When I was in teaching elementary, Jeanine, quick story before we get off. I went to Kinko's. I laminated pictures of my face and I put them on lanyards. And I would have a Mr. Lang in every group, and they would put the lanyard on and be like, "This is Mr. Lang. Don't talk to Mrs. Lang.
Funny.
Don't talk to Mr. Lang before you talk to Mr.
Funny.
Lang."
That's
all right.
Really funny.
So it is what it is. All right. So that's what we got today. Follow us on social media. Jeanine is at Jeanine P. Collins. I'm at Chocolate Teacher. It's spelled weird. So if you go to at ed.Xtraordinary, it will be more of the mythology behind ed.Xtraordinary is coming. Enjoy the rest of your day, your staff development day. If you're a CCSD teacher, you do the good work. Without you, the world would stop functioning. And I think that's one of the things that you're not told enough. You're awesome and amazing, and we will see you when we see you. Outro.